Okay, we're going to get started. I know we've got a number out camping, out traveling, and some who just have some health issues. We're going to continue to pray for some of the folks. We won't name all their names, but we know there's just ones amongst our class that are struggling, that need help, God's energy and strength and healing power and other things. There's others that are making other decisions, so we're going to pray for them just in general. If you're thinking of someone that's on your heart, you can pray that name, lift that to the Lord. Also in the back, there's some pages on that back table back there for information if you're interested in Fruitland Bible Camp. It's the old-fashioned camp meetings. They have places you can accommodate RVs or cabins or dorms. And it's the seniors camp, seniors Bible camp in September. And there's a whole schedule and information. So take a look if you'd like in that back table, if that's of interest to you. You can ask Barb more questions if you want have questions about it. But Father, we just join our hearts together right now and ask you to be with those who physically need your touch and strength today. Those who just need you to provide answers and peace. Those that need healing and strength. Those that need your direction and guidance. Father, we lift this group of people to you and just ask for you to meet needs. And you know the needs before we even say them out loud. So we're thankful we can trust you, that you do not change. You're the same yesterday, today, and forever. And the principles we study and read in this Bible are the same today because you're the same God. So we're thankful for that. Would you teach us nuggets of truth today from your word in Jesus' name? Amen. 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 We are in 2 Kings chapter 10. We got about halfway. 2 Kings chapter 10. We're going to pick it up in verse 17. And we'll just see how far we get today. I'm not going to make promises. We're going to try to power through here. We've got today and next Wednesday, and then we're taking that break through August. So that'll be a chance for me to do some more planning and preparing and all those things. And then we'll jump back in the first Wednesday of September and hit it hard and get going. So, and don't ask me where we're going then, because I don't know yet. Depends where we get today, okay? So let's just move on. Chapter 10, verse 17 in 2 Kings. When Jehu came to Samaria, he killed all who were left there of Ahab's family. He destroyed them according to the word of the Lord spoken to Elijah. So Elijah the prophet had given this answer. Remember that Ahab's family was the one that led Israel into the worst of sinfulness, evilness, wickedness, idolatry, and all kinds of things. He and his wife Jezebel, and the price is being paid. Verse 18, then Jehu brought all the people together and said to them, Ahab served Baal a little. Jehu will serve him much. Now summon all the prophets of Baal, all his servants, all his priests. See that no one is missing, because I'm going to hold a great sacrifice for Baal. Anyone who fails to come will no longer live. So if you were getting worried about that, then the next verse says, but Jehu was acting deceptively in order to destroy the servants of Baal. So he has done the secret plan. Get them all to come. They're going to honor him. He makes this big statement. Not true. And he gets them all to come gather, because how else are you going to figure out who all the people who are serving Baal are? Who are all the prophets of the priests of Baal, the idol worship? Again, remember this was tied to the horrific way of them sacrificing their own children to God and all kinds of things. So verse 22, and Jehu said to the keeper of the wardrobe, bring robes for all the servants of Baal. So he brought out robes for them. Why? They would all look alike, have special clothing on. It's kind of like when you show up at something, you're looking for the people involved running the event. They should all have matching t-shirts or matching aprons. Well, he brings a robe out and he says, okay, let's just give them a special robe. What an honor. So people were coming out, and if they wanted that honor, they were taking the robes and putting on the robes, not knowing they were marking themselves for the end, okay? So this is what's happening. They did this whole thing, and we get to, did that finish a chapter? Did I miss it? No. Wow. I got so excited about the robes, I just went on. Okay, then Jehu and Jehonadab, son of Rechab, went into the temple of Baal. Jehu said to the servants of Baal, look around and see that no one who serves the Lord is here with you. Only the servants of Baal. So again, he's very careful to select off so no one who serves God would be caught in the mix here. Get them all separated out. Verse 24, so they went in to make sacrifices and burnt offerings. Now Jehu had posted 80 men outside with this warning. If one of you lets any of the men I am placing in your hands escape, it will be your life for his. As soon as Jehu had finished making the burnt offering, he ordered the guards and officers, go in and kill them. Let no one escape. So they cut them down with the sword. The guards and officers threw the bodies out and then entered the inner shrine of the temple of Baal. They brought the sacred stone out of the temple of Baal and burned it. They demolished the sacred stone of Baal and tore down the temple of Baal, and people have used it for a latrine to this day. That always made me laugh. Even as a kid, I'm going, a latrine, I had to have that explained. That's like a bathroom. So they turned it into a public restroom, perfect, which would have been the ultimate, what's the word I want?
Insult.
Insult or desecration of what they would have called Baal's holy place. So it's just, man, he basically cleaned the nation out of all the Baal worshippers. Verse 28, so Jehu destroyed Baal worship in Israel. However, he did not turn away from the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, which he had caused Israel to commit, the worship of the golden calves at Bethel and Dan. So he takes care of this one area of idolatry, but he's still kind of holding on to the golden calf thing that Jeroboam had started, that whole thing. And so he wasn't totally all the way serving God. So there was this part where, well, that's good enough, right? If you just part way serve God. I mean, like if you don't, you're all looking at me. See, that's the rationale our world has. Well, if I'm a good person, I haven't killed anyone. I'm not a murderer, and I don't steal. So I'm good enough, right? That's close enough, right? No, it's not. God has a plan. God is very clear about those things. And there are people who show up in all of our churches across Moses Lake, and they go to church, and everyone thinks they're a great church person, but part of their life is not being lived for God. Well, Jehu's trying. Let's see how this works out. The Lord said to Jehu, verse 30, because you have done well in accomplishing what is right in my eyes, and have done to the house of Ahab all I had in mind to do, your descendants will sit on the throne of Israel to the 4th generation. Yet Jehu was not careful to keep the law of the Lord, the God of Israel, with all his heart. What does he want? All of our heart. He did not turn away from the sins of Jeroboam, which he had caused Israel to commit. Second reminder. You know, they just said that. Now I was reminding again, second reminder. Not all the way committed to God, not with his whole heart, with most of it, maybe half-ish, maybe part of his heart. Verse 32, in those days the Lord began to reduce the size of Israel. Hazael overpowered the Israelites throughout their territory, east of the Jordan in all the land of Gilead, the region of Gad, Reuben, and Manasseh, from those original tribes, from Aor by the Arnon Gorge through Gilead to Bashan. You know, you've got these different people outside. I guess the way, if we had a map, there'd be these outside areas looking in towards Israel. And so they're starting to snatch away bits and pieces of it. They're starting to lose all this parts of their land that God had said was all of theirs. If they what? If they lived for him and honored his laws and rules and lived the life, a godly lifestyle. And it hadn't been. As for the other events of Jehu's reign, all he did and all his achievements, are they not written in the book of the annals of the kings of Israel? Jehu rested with his ancestors and was buried in Samaria, and Jehoaz, his son, succeeded him as king. The time that Jehu reigned over Israel and Samaria was 28 years. So you go straight into chapter 11, and kind of, I wrote in mine, the unthinkable comes into reality. The daughter of Jezebel. Okay, so we all are on the right track. The daughter of Jezebel becomes the queen over Judah. Could it get any worse? I mean, a worshiper of Baal was in power of the nation that held God's promise. She built a temple for Baal right in Jerusalem. Let's see how did this happen? How could the very center, remember, Israel's the top part, the northern kingdom. It's always had its struggles. But Judah, the heart, God's heart, that he loved that place, held Jerusalem. He put his temple, he had his temple built there. It was David's center of all operations. He said, I'll let this stay in the family. I'll let this, what happens? Chapter 11. When Athaliah, the mother of Ahaziah, saw that her son was dead, she proceeded to destroy the whole royal family. So most of them were killed in battle, but she just made sure if there's any leftovers or any grandchildren or whatever. Yeah, did you hear me? Her grandchildren. Well, let's kill them all. She didn't get the Nana award, okay? She's not going to get the cute Nana t-shirts, okay? Verse 2, but Jehosheba, the daughter of King Jehoram, or Joram, some of you said, and sister of Ahaziah, took Joash. Some of you will have Jehoash or Joash, son of Ahaziah, and stole him away from among the royal princes who were about to be murdered. She put him and his nurse in a bedroom to hide him from Athaliah, so he was not killed. He remained hidden with his nurse at the temple of the Lord for 6 years while Athaliah ruled the land. Okay, so I always wondered how you keep up to a 6-year-old hidden in a room at the temple and no one figures it out, and keep this child growing up and going like, why can't I go out and play like the other kids? You know, I'm just like, wow. But she did it to save his life, and she hid this boy in this inner room in the temple. And obviously, hello, Athaliah is not going to be going to the temple of God. Remember, she's evil. She's exactly like her mother Jezebel. So I guess because he was an infant, she didn't keep track of it. Ahaziah didn't really go looking for this child, and so that's why a lot of people think he was able to sneak away and hide. So now, 7 years into Athaliah's reign, 7th year of Joash's life, things come to a change. Now there's details. 2 Chronicles chapter 23, the first 11 verses, give even a more detailed part of this moment in history. Verse 4, in the 7th year, Jehoiada sent for the commanders of units of 100, the Kerites. Okay, some of your versions use Cherethites and Pelethites. 2 Samuel and 1 Kings both mention these. These are outside things, outside groups of people, not Israelites. And the guards, and had them brought to him at the temple of the Lord. He made a covenant with them and put them under oath at the temple of the Lord. And then he showed him the king's son. So here are these outsiders. These are the guys, but they're people I can trust. He brings them in and says, opens the door, peekaboo, guess who's here? The king's son. He's 7 years old now. He's been in hiding. We've kept him hidden. Nobody knows. Here's his boy. He actually should be the king, not the wicked Athaliah, the daughter of Jezebel. So there had to have been really a lot of prayerful consideration. I mean, because this is risky. Because out of all of them, if there's one whistleblower, obviously the child is going to be killed. So, verse 5, he commanded them, saying, this is what you are to do. You who are in the 3 companies that are going on duty on the Sabbath, 1/3 of you guarding the royal palace, 1/3 at the south sur, which is south gate, and 1/3 at the gate behind the guard, who take turns guarding the temple. So these are like temple police or temple guards. And you who are in the other 2 companies that normally go off Sabbath duty are all to guard the temple for the king. Station yourselves around the king, each of you with weapon in hand. Anyone who approaches your ranks is to be put to death. Stay close to the king wherever he goes. So here they are. It's like major secret service. Okay, he's got all these guards on all sides. Those who were coming on duty, those who were going off. So it would double the size of guards, double amount of people to temple guards. Now, temple guards were a different group of people than those who worked for the military, for the king, you know, that kind of thing. So here are these guys who were like temple guards. We'll just keep it at that. Verse 9. The commanders of units of 100 did just as Jehoiada the priest ordered. Each one took his men, those who were going on duty on the Sabbath and those who were going off duty. And they came to Jehoiada the priest. Then he gave the commanders the spears and shields that had belonged to King David and that were in the temple of the Lord. Remember those back from 1 Kings 14 when we talked about that? Verse 11, the guards, each with weapon in hand, stationed themselves around the king, near the altar and the temple, from the south side to the north side of the temple. Jehoiada brought out the king's son and put the crown on him. He presented him with a copy of the covenant and proclaimed him king. They anointed him, and the people clapped their hands and shouted, "Long live the king." All of this refers back to Deuteronomy chapter 17, where very carefully it gives them the listing of what they're to do to bring the requirements to wear the crown. And what he did is, if you notice, he puts the crown on. That's the political side of his position as a king. And then it says they gave him a copy of the covenant. He was the keeper of the law. So he also had the legal side of being king. And then it says they anointed him, which was the spiritual anointing. So he was politically, legally, and spiritually made king with those three parts. And all it was clearly described in Deuteronomy 17, those steps for anointing a new king. Verse 13, when Athaliah heard the noise made by the guards and the people, she went to the people at the temple of the Lord. She looked, and there was the king, standing by the pillar as the custom was. The officers and the trumpeters were beside the king, and all the people of the land were rejoicing and blowing trumpets. Then Athaliah tore her robes and called out, "Treason! Treason!" Little too little and a little too late. This has already all happened now. You see, none of those things took place for Athaliah. She went around, remember, and tried to just murder anybody else that could possibly step into the role, and then took it upon herself to make herself queen over the land. And she's evil. And so here is this whole thing officially taking place in the correct biblical pattern. Not good for Athaliah. Verse 15, Jehoiada the priest ordered the commanders of units of 100 who were in charge of the troops, "Bring her out between the ranks and put to the sword anyone who follows her." For the priest had said she must not be put to death in the temple of the Lord. So they seized her as she reached the place where the horses entered the palace grounds, and there she was put to death. It was right not to kill her in the temple. That would have been, again, a desecration of the temple. Not only was killing her in her blood, but she was evil. So, verse 17, Jehoiada then made a covenant between the Lord and the king and people that they would be the Lord's people. He also made a covenant between the king and the people. This is all important because this unholy reign by Athaliah had torn down everything. He's saying, the first thing I need to do is do what? Make things right with God. Make right the covenants between God and his people, and the position of a king and the people. All the people of the land, verse 18, went to the temple of Baal and tore it down. They smashed the altars and idols to pieces and killed Matan, the priest of Baal, in front of the altars. Remember, Jezebel had caused her wicked husband Ahab to actually build that temple. And now her daughter Athaliah had built another temple to Baal in the holy city of Jerusalem. They just keep getting torn down and rebuilding new Baal temples. So the fact that there was a priest and he was named and everything shows how influential that was in that area at that time. Then Jehoiada the priest posted guards at the temple of the Lord. He took with him the commanders of hundreds, the Kerites, the guards, and all the people of the land, and together they brought the king down from the temple of the Lord and went into the palace, entering by the way of the gate of the guards. The king then took his place on the royal throne. All the people of the land rejoiced, and the city was calm, because Athaliah had been slain with the sword at the palace. Joash was 7 years old when he began to reign. So this is just think about a 7-year-old that you know. Of course, some of us would prefer a 7-year-old than others. That's just saying. Moving on. I want to start something here. Chapter 12. In the 7th year of Jehu, Joash, or Jehoash, became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 40 years. His mother's name was Zibiah. She was from Beersheba. Joash did what was right in the eyes of the Lord all the years Jehoiada the priest instructed him. Why is this important to note? He was a boy at the age of 7, but he reigned that long. What, 40 years? He reigned 40 years, and the whole time he did what was right because he had a godly influence, the godly priest of God of the temple, giving him, he listened to his pastor. He listened to godly influence, and he continued to live correctly and live right. You also have to realize that if you go back through all the, you can figure it out, it's his uncle. It's actually his uncle that's the priest, the head priest. So his uncle's influence, that's why we say uncles, I don't care if you don't have kids, you're still an uncle or an aunt that influences kids.
Amen.
And that's the issue here. This uncle, who was the priest, is influencing his life. Verse 3. The high places, however, were not removed. The people continue to offer sacrifices and burn incense there. Yeah, I guess what I'm cautious about, because people will usually ask, well, what do you mean? Can God be worshipped at a high place out when you're, oh man, I've worshipped the Lord sitting on the dock fishing many a time, many a day and many an hour, or in the mountains, or at the beach as the waves roll in. Yes, God can be worshipped anywhere, but the problem is, in this culture at this time, the influence of the Canaanite culture around them that would set up these areas of like almost idol worship to nature. We all know people, I mean, I've talked to people and man, they basically worship the ocean and they worship the mountains and they worship, no, I'm worshiping God in those places, so it can be done. But they would tend to draw people towards worshiping his creation, not the creator. And so that's later what actually begins turning people away from God. Verse 4, Joash said to the priests, collect all the money that's brought as sacred offerings to the temple of the Lord. The money collected in the census, the money received from personal vows, and the money brought voluntarily to the temple. Let every priest receive the money from one of the treasurers, then use it to repair whatever damage is found in the temple. So what, after basically 7 years of total neglect and abuse, we know that from 2 Chronicles, this money was taken and began to pay them to fix the temple back up. It had gone to ruin because it had been under Athaliah's evil reign, and she didn't let them fix anything in the temple. So verse 6, but by the 23rd year of King Joash, the priests still had not repaired the temple. No different than today. Well, yeah, we'll get, you know. Did you ever collect those little, I'm going to get off course here. Those little wooden coins that had TUIT on it? Around to it. A lot of people, you never get around to it. People never get around. I'm going to do, oh, I'll get it when I get around to it. So then my dad used to collect round to it. They were little wooden things and too. And he'd said, well, you know, now you can't say you can never get around to it. And here you go. Oh, that was old. That was as sad as when I saw it as a kid. But by the 23rd year, verse 6 of King Joash, the priest still had not repaired the temple. Therefore, King Joash summoned Jehoiada, the priest, and the other priests, and asked them, why aren't you repairing the damage done to the temple? Take no more money from your treasures, but hand it over for repairing the temple. The priests agreed that they would not collect any more money from the people, and that they would not repair the temple themselves. Jehoiada the priest took a chest and bored a hole in its lid. He placed it beside the altar on the right side as one enters the temple of the Lord. The priests who guarded the entrance put into the chest all the money that was brought to the temple of the Lord. Whenever they saw that there was a large amount of money in the chest, the royal secretary and the high priest king counted the money that had been brought into the temple of the Lord and put it into bags. When the amount had been determined, they gave the money to the men appointed to supervise the work on the temple. With it they paid those who worked on the temple of the Lord, the carpenters and builders, the masons and stonecutters. They purchased timber and blocks of dressed stone for the repair of the temple of the Lord, and met all the other expenses of restoring the temple. Verse 13, the money brought into the temple was not spent for making silver basins, wick trimmers, sprinkling bowls, trumpets, or any other articles of gold or silver for the temple of the Lord. It was paid to the workers who used it to repair the temple. So they had money, but money wasn't being used correctly, so now they've come up with this plan so that they get the repairs done first. Let's have some priorities here. Verse 15, they did not require an accounting from those to whom they gave the money to pay the workers, because they acted with complete honesty. What does that tell me? Even though this king was young, he had the wisdom to pick trustworthy people. The trustworthy people could be given money and they would spend it the way it's supposed to be spent. And so that's important. Verse 16, the money from the guilt offerings and sin offerings, some would be called purification offerings, was not brought into the temple of the Lord. It belonged to the priests. About this time, Hazael, king of Aram, went up and attacked Gath and captured it. Then he turned to attack Jerusalem. But Joash, king of Judah, took all the sacred objects dedicated by his predecessors, Jehoshaphat, Jehoram, and Ahaziah, the kings of Judah, and the gifts he had himself had dedicated, and all the gold found in the treasuries of the temple of the Lord and of the royal palace, and he sent them to Hazael, king of Aram, who then withdrew from Jerusalem. So here's this Aramean king from outside the area who wants to come and invade. Joash decides, well, I'll just take care of it. I'll just give him all this gold and treasures and all the things, and that'll buy him off, and it works for a time. It'll come later in Joash's reign. Verse 19, as for the other events of the reign of Joash and all he did, are they not written in the book of the annals of the kings of Judah? His officials conspired against him and assassinated him at Beth Millo on the road down to Silla. The officials who murdered him were Jozabad, son of Shemeath, and Jehozabad, son of Shomer. He died and was buried with his ancestors in the city of David, and Amaziah his son succeeded him as king. It's really close to Amazon, but it's not, okay? Some of you Amazon shoppers. What we need to know is that 2 Chronicles chapter 24, if you jumped out, you would find that the Arameans come back and invade anyway. So instead of fighting them off, asking God for help, doing those things, he thought he could pay someone off and buy time. He bought some time, but they still came and invaded. So that takes place. And then he ends up getting killed. 2 Chronicles chapter 24 tells more about how he was wounded actually in that whole battle thing, and then murdered, and concludes that. So this is where we have to buckle down and fly through kings that live for a while, do kind of okay, but until there's someone wholeheartedly for God, they just go so far and then get taken out. Chapter 13, I love it. We'll probably go rather fast because it's basically, I call it the coming and going of kings. Okay? Coming and going. So, strap your seatbelts. Here we go. Generation, northern and southern kingdoms. They come and go and come and go and come and go. That's why I gave you that chart in the beginning. They just keep coming and going. So, we'll read on chapter 13. In the 23rd year of Joash, son of Ahaziah, king of Judah, Jehoahaz, son of Jehu, became the king of Israel and Samaria, and he reigned 17 years. So we've jumped to the other kingdom. He did evil in the eyes of the Lord by following the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, which he had caused Israel to commit. What is that? Remember, the two calves. So up in Israel, northern kingdom, he is going and celebrating the two calves. He did not turn away from them, so the Lord's anger burned against Israel, and for a long time he kept them under the power of Hazael, king of Aram, and Ben-Hadad, his son. So here he takes this issue of their disobedience, and he allows the Arameans outside that area to continue to just persecute them. And they would suffer. They would have raids that would come in and steal and kill and burn and take, and that's what was happening. If you remember, after the end of the house of Ahab in Jehu's purge. We killed almost everyone off. They reverted, in a sense, to a level of syncretism. Now, let me explain if you don't understand the word syncretism. Syncretism is a style, and this Jeroboam started this, and that was, you can worship God, but you can also throw in other stuff. Syncretism means blending religions together. So you can go to church on Sunday, and on Monday you can put some food out for your shrine for your idol. And on Tuesday, Wednesday you could show up at a Bible study, and then Thursday or Friday you can, go to other religions and do those as well. And it's okay, because it's all okay with God. As long as you're still doing the good part, you can also blend in other parts. That's called syncretism. That is not right. Okay? That is not what God. God is a jealous God. There's one and only one true God. There's only one and only one way to heaven, through his son Jesus Christ. He's very, very clear about that. But there are a lot of people who love to practice syncretism. They don't call it that, but what they are is they're taking bits and pieces of other religions and stirring them in the pot. Jeroboam did that when he said, oh, I want to honor God, but you know, why don't we build 2 calves and you can worship those too? So we're still honoring God and it's okay, but let's just throw these calves out, and what will that hurt? Syncretism. So during this time, that's a key. So if you didn't know that word before, now you're really smart. You've got a whole new word. And so this is what was going on. So verse 4, then Jehoaz sought the Lord's favor, and the Lord listened to him, for he saw how severely the king of Aram was oppressing Israel. So God listens to him because of his people. Not because he was that great, because he was doing these other things, but he's crying out, and God still has a sense of mercy for his people. So verse 5, the Lord provided a deliverer for Israel, and they escaped from the power of Aram. So the Israelites lived in their own homes as they had before. So I don't know whether God used another king to come in and take care of that king that was pursuing them, or what he did, but he took care of it, and they were able to resettle in their own homes. Verse 6, but they did not turn away from the sins of the house of Jeroboam. They kept those stupid calves, which he had caused Israel to commit. They continued in them. Also, the Asherah pole remained standing in Samaria. The Asherah pole is horrific. It is a symbol of sexual fertility perversity. Okay? It's just gross, nasty. You don't even want to study about that. It's just a nasty thing. And they let that stand. Verse 7, nothing had been left of the army of Jehoaz except 50 horsemen, 10 chariots, and 10,000 foot soldiers. For the king of Aram had destroyed the rest, and made them like the dust at threshing floor. As for the other events of the reign of Jehoaz, all he did and his achievements, are they not written in the book of the annals of the kings of Israel? Jehoaz rested with his ancestors and was buried in Samaria. And Jehoash, or Joash, his son, succeeded him as king. Not the same other one. This is another one, but he had it's like John and John, okay? They had, sorry, just a lot of John, okay. In the 37th year of Joash, king of Judah, verse 10, Jehoash, son of Jehoahaz, could they just do a little better with his names, became king of Israel in Samaria, and he reigned 16 years. He did evil in the eyes of the Lord, and did not turn away from any of the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, which he caused Israel to commit. He continued them. He kept the 2 calves and all that stuff up there, the syncretism. Verse 12, as for the other events of the reign of Jehoash, all he did in his achievements, including his war against Amaziah, king of Judah, are they not written in the book of the annals of the kings of Israel? Jehoash rested with his ancestors, and Jeroboam succeeded him on the throne. Jehoash was buried in Samaria with the kings of Israel. Another one bites the dust. Now, we just keep moving on with these kings, and they keep having these little spots in history, and they have their chance to turn the whole thing around, but they leave a little bit of stuff. Verse 14, now Elisha had been suffering from the illness from which he died. Jehoash, king of Israel, went down to see him and wept over him. Oh, my father, spiritually, my father. he cried, "the chariots and the horsemen of Israel." Remember, that's kind of what happened when Elijah went, and now he's saying the same things about Elisha. They'll come and get you and take you to heaven. This is this moment, and it seems like, oh, see, he really is the king of Israel, really does care about God, and he really does care about God's prophet. But, verse 15, Elisha said, "Get a bow and some arrows." And he did so. "Take the bow in your hands," he said to the king of Israel. When he had taken it, Elisha put his hands on the king's hands. "Open the east window," he said, and he opened it. "Shoot," Elisha said, and he shot. "The Lord's arrow of victory, the arrow of victory over Aram," Elisha declared. "You will completely destroy the Arameans at Aphek." So he gives him this amazing prophecy ahead of time. That's what that means. Then he said, "Now take the arrows," and the king took them. Elisha told him, "Strike the ground." Well, he struck the ground 3 times and he stopped. The man of God was angry with him and said, "You should have struck the ground 5 or 6 times. Then you would have defeated Aram and completely destroyed it. But now you will defeat it only 3 times. So this is a symbolic gesture. Most scholars believe, he did a little tap, tap, tap 3 times because he's like, yeah, whatever. The old prophet. He didn't put a lot of faith in what he was saying and having him do. And that's why he did fewer amounts of time, and he paid the price for that. So verse 20, Elisha died and was buried. Verse 21, once while some Israelites were burying a man, suddenly they saw a band of raiders. So they threw the man's body into Elisha's tomb. And when the body touched Elisha's bones, the man came to life and stood up on his feet. I always thought that was kind of cool. It's, the problem is some people would take that and say, oh, bones are magic, so let's hang on to bones. Yeah. And all I was saying is God's presence is faithfully with him. Even after he died, there's still a presence of God there, powerful enough to do that. Verse 22, Hazael, king of Aram, oppressed Israel throughout the reign of Jehoahaz. But the Lord was gracious to them and had compassion and showed concern for them because of his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. To this day, he has been unwilling to destroy them or banish them from his presence. Hazael, king of Aram, died, and Ben-Hadad, his son, succeeded him as king. Then Jehoash, son of Jehoahaz, recaptured from Ben-Hadad, son of Hazael, the towns he'd taken in battle from his father Jehoahaz. 3 times Jehoash defeated him. Ooh, isn't that what Elisha said would happen? 3 times. And so he recovered those Israelite towns. Chapter 14. Whew. In the 2nd year of Jehoash, or Joash, son of Jehoahaz, king of Israel, Amaziah, son of Jehoash, king of Judah, began to reign. So again, you've got a picture of the 2 kingdoms. He was 35 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 29 years. His mother's name was Jehoiada. Oh, great. Now this is the woman's name. She was from Jerusalem. He did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, but not as his father David, as in ancestrally, had done. In everything he followed the example of his father Joash. The high places, however, were not removed. The people continued to offer sacrifices and burn incense there. Again, seriously, can they not figure it out? You follow God all the way or not, but they just go part way and keep this going. Verse 5, after the kingdom was firmly in his grasp, he executed the officials who had murdered his father the king. Yet he did not put the children of the assassins to death. In accordance with what is written in the book of the law of Moses, where the Lord commanded, parents are not to be put to death for their children, nor children put to death for their parents. Each will die for their own sin. So in other words, it's telling us from Deuteronomy 24:16, he's following the book of the law. He's at least looking at those principles. Verse 7, he was the one who defeated 10,000 Edomites in the valley of Salt and captured Selah in battle, calling it Joktheel, the name it has to this day. 2 Chronicles chapter 25, if you wanted to, you can go there and get more information about that whole battle and all the things that took place there. Part of it, he gives God credit for the victory, but he also gets very proud about what has been accomplished. So let's read on. Verse 8. Then Amaziah sent messengers to Jehoash, son of Jehoaz, the king of Jehu, king of Israel, with the challenge. Come, let us face each other in battle. So you get this? Northern kingdom Israel, southern kingdom Judah. Now the thing goes up. Let's face each other in battle. He just had victory over an enemy. So let's just deal with what's between us. And then he challenges for battle. Verse 9. But Jehoash, king of Israel, replied to Amaziah, king of Judah. He tells him this whole story. Because remember, you've got the king of Israel. What was Israel? 10 of the 12 tribes. And then you've got little Judah, who is kept just because of David and because of Jerusalem. So you've got little Judah, 1, and he's challenging all of Israel to a battle. You got the picture? You've got little Judah, and that king, because he had some success in the battle, God helped him. So obviously he is something. He is hot. He is a good guy. He is strong. Well, it's time to just whip Israel into line. So he challenges Israel. It's like a 10-to-1 challenge. Okay? And so this is a response of the king of Israel. A thistle in Lebanon sent a message to a cedar in Lebanon. Give your daughter to my son in marriage. Then a wild beast in Lebanon came along and trampled the thistle underfoot. You have indeed defeated Edom, and now you are arrogant. Glory in your victory, but stay at home. Why ask for trouble and cause your own downfall, and that of Judah also? Okay, little Judah, you had won, you fought Edom and God gave you victory. But why are you coming and trying to fight with us? You're going to be wiped out, and so will Judah. The nation be wiped out. And why would you come and threaten us with this kind of thing? So he uses a way to respond is, in those days, it was called a fable. Like Aesop's fables were to teach lessons. That's what he's doing here. Trying to teach him a lesson about this thistle and a cedar. Now think of he's picturing Israel is the cedar tree, strong and mighty, the most precious and valuable wood. And Judah is a thistle. Can't say that very fast. I can't even say it at all now. A thistle. And so he says, look at the comparison. What are you thinking? Verse 11. Amaziah, however, would not listen. So he's prideful and stubborn. He would not listen, so Jehoash, king of Israel, attacked. He and Amaziah, king of Judah, faced each other at Beth Shemesh in Judah. Now, Beth Shemesh the name means house of the sun, S-U-N, house of the sun. There was a temple to the sun god there, way back in Canaanite times. So it was about 15 miles west of Jerusalem. It was actually the town where the Ark of the Covenant was taken in 1 Samuel, when it first came back. And, there have been several Philistine towns. So over time, here he is. So he's kind of forcing a standoff, and he's going to lose in his own territory. He doesn't go over to their place. He's like, come on over into my yard and let's fight. This is what the knucklehead, in Judah was saying. So verse 12, Judah was routed by Israel, of course, and every man fled to his home. Jehoash, king of Israel, captured Amaziah, king of Judah, the son of Joash, the son of Ahaziah, at Beth-Shemesh. Then Jehoash went to Jerusalem and broke down the wall of Jerusalem from the Ephraim gate to the corner gate. That's a section about 400 cubits long. That's about 600 feet of the walls. He took all the gold and silver and all the articles found in the temple of the Lord and in the treasuries of the royal palace. He also took hostages and returned to Samaria. He loots everything. You have to understand too, remember this is not just a little wall. The walls were up to 10 feet or more thick. So there was people living in between an inner and outer wall. This is what the temple and that whole area is like. And so to bust all that down is not like he went and kicked over the picket fence. No, this is big. And now it's going to leave them wide open to looters and raiders from all over the place. So he's basically, ruined Jerusalem. Jehoash, he never intended to occupy foreign land. He's just going to take all their wealth and leave them wide open for predators and everything else, ruin them. So, verse 15, as for the other events of the reign of Jehoash, what he did in his achievements, including his war against Amaziah, king of Judah, are they not written in the book of the annals of the kings of Israel? You get this phrase, they're going to say this every time. Jehoash rested with his ancestors and was buried in Samaria with the kings of Israel. And Jeroboam, now there's a name coming up, his son succeeded him as king. Amaziah, son of Joash, king of Judah, he lived for 15 years after the death of Jehoash, son of Jehoahaz, the king of Israel. As for the other events of Amaziah's reign, are they not written in the book of the annals of the kings of Judah? So we've cleaned up king of Judah, king of Israel. What's happened now? They conspired against him, verse 19. They conspired against him in Jerusalem, and he fled to Lachish, but they sent men after him to Lachish and killed him there. He was brought back by horse and was buried in Jerusalem with his ancestors in the city of David. Then all the people of Judah took Azariah, some of you will have Uzziah with a U, who was 16 years old, and made him king in the place of his father Amaziah. He was the one who rebuilt Elath and restored it to Judah after Amaziah rested with his ancestors. So you just hold on. It's just king after king after king after king who kill each other or are assassinated, and then we move on. In the 15th year of Amaziah, son of Joash, king of Judah, Jeroboam, son of Jehoash, king of Israel, became king in Samaria, and he reigned 41 years. So don't be confused. It's the second king of Israel who had the same name. Like, seriously, could you not get different names? Verse 24, he did evil in the eyes of the Lord. He did not turn away from any of the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, which he had caused Israel to commit. He was the one who restored the boundaries of Israel from Lebo-Hamath to the Dead Sea, in accordance with the word of the Lord, the God of Israel, spoken through his servant Jonah, son of Amittai, the prophet from Gath-Hepher. It's Jonah from the whole whale story. Okay? So he speaks in, and remember then, because he got mad because the people then turned to God. Remember that whole story? Okay. We're not going to go down that path. We'll never finish. Verse 26, the Lord had seen how bitterly everyone in Israel, whether slave or free, was suffering. There was no one to help them. And since the Lord had not said he would blot out the name of Israel from under the heaven, he saved them by the hand of Jeroboam, son of Jehoash. So God brings this son to the place of power to help the nation of Israel recover. And as for the other events, verse 28 of Jeroboam's reign, all he did, and his military achievements, including how he recovered for Israel both Damascus and Hamath, which had belonged to Judah, are they not written in the book of the annals of the kings of Israel? Jeroboam rested with his ancestors, the kings of Israel, and Zechariah, his son, succeeded him as king. So this is the fourth, in case you don't want to miss this is Zechariah now, is the fourth one in the line of Jehu. Do you remember God said he would be gracious to him, chapter 10, verse 30, he would be gracious to him and his family for 4 generations. This is the last. In the line of Jehu is this Zechariah dude that jumps in now in chapter 15. In the 27th year of Jeroboam, king of Israel, and Azariah, son of Amaziah, king of Judah, began to reign. So you're going to jump back. Some of your versions are going to use Uzziah with a U, or this Amaziah thing. Verse 2, he was 16 years old when he became king. He reigned in Jerusalem 52 years. His mother's name was Jechaliah. Well, at least it's a little different. She was from Jerusalem. He did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, just as his father Amaziah had done. The high places, however, were not removed, and the people continued to offer sacrifices and burn incense there. So, remember that along with his father, this son comes in. His dad, remember the thistle guy that made the threats, He was released from Israel. The cedar, Israel, released him and let him come back, and he finishes 10 years of his life. He finishes back in Judah. So that's where it was kind of there, but he was captured, but then he comes back. And you can study all that out or go like whatever, because it's another king thing. Verse 5, the Lord afflicted the king with leprosy until the day he died, and he lived in a separate house. Jotham, the king's son, had charge of the palace and governed the people of the land. 2 Chronicles chapter 26 gives way more information about this whole thing, and the disease, and the son, and how that all happens. Jotham had been basically a royal official, a senior administrator, and he kind of handled everything for his father, who had to stay at home because of his leprosy. Verse 6, as for the other...
27th year of Jeroboam.
Sorry.
That's fine.
I don't want to get it on.
Anyone can help her shut it down. There we go, you're fine. As for the other... I thought we were going to have a... As for the other events of Azariah's reign and all he did, are they not written in the book of the annals of the kings of Judah? Azariah rested with his ancestors and was buried near them in the city of David, and Jotham his son succeeded him as king. So now we've got Jotham. In the 38th year of Azariah, king of Judah, Zechariah son of Jeroboam became king of Israel in Samaria, and he reigned 6 months. Not so good. He did evil in the eyes of the Lord as his predecessors had done, and he did not turn away from the sins of Jeroboam son of Nebat, which he had caused Israel to commit. So verse 10, Shallum son of Jabesh conspired against Zechariah. He attacked him in front of the people, assassinated him, and succeeded him as king. The other events of Zechariah's reign are written in the book of the annals of the kings of Israel. So the word of the Lord spoken to Jehu was fulfilled. Back from 2 Kings, chapter 10, verse 30. Your descendants will sit on the throne of Israel to the 4th generation. And then because of assassination, that stops that line. That family is out of the running now. Verse 13, Shallum son of Jabesh became king in the 39th year of Uzziah, king of Judah, and he reigned in Samaria 1 month. Now, do you notice? We've gone from 40 years down to 20 years, down to 10 years, down to a year, down to 6 months. Now we're to 1 month. What is this an indication of? Scholars have actually studied this process. And they said the downfall or the collapse of any nation is when you have these kings, reigning kings, less and less and less time on the throne. So there's no continuation, there's no overall plan, it's just like this broken society, and it just keeps going downhill. Verse 14, then Menahem, son of Gadai, went from Tirzah up to Samaria. He attacked Shallum, son of Jabesh in Samaria, assassinated him, and succeeded him as king. It's like all we're doing now is assassination and take over, assassination and take over. Verse 15, the other events of Shallum's reign and the conspiracy he led are written in the book of the annals of the kings of Israel. So he got 1 month. But he still got an obituary here in the scriptures. So verse 16, at that time, Menahem started out from Tirzah, attacked Tifsa, and everyone in the city and its vicinity, because they refused to open their gates. So he sacked Tifsa and ripped open all the pregnant women. These atrocities of war were common in the ancient world. The book of Amos even talks about it in the 1st chapter. Israel's repeated sins put them in danger of these barbaric acts against them. Hosea chapter 10 and 13 will talk about it. So you've got these various Old Testament prophets that say, this is what's going to happen. And they just still keep having these sinful assassinator leaders assassinate the next one and take over and continue to lead them down the wrong path. Verse 17, in the 39th year of Azariah, king of Judah, Menahem, son of Gadai, became king of Israel, and he reigned in Samaria 10 years. He did evil in the eyes of the Lord during his entire reign. He did not turn away from the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, which he had caused Israel to commit. See, I'm ready to pack my bags and go knock down those calves. I mean, seriously. How many reigns of kings, and they still can't stop this? It was started way back there. What's ironic, just a side note, is Menahem, that's in leadership now, his name means comforter. I don't think so. since he assassinated people, and ripped open pregnant women. Verse 19, then Pul, son of a king of Assyria, invaded the land, and Menahem gave him 1,000 talents, about 38 tons of silver, to gain his support and strengthen his own hold on the kingdom. Menahem exacted this money from Israel. Every wealthy person had to contribute 50 shekels, about 1¼ pounds of silver, to be given to the king of Assyria. So the king of Assyria withdrew and stayed in the land no longer. So again, under the king Pul, Assyria is now going to become the most dominant power in the Middle East. For at least over a century, and they're going to continue in this little thing between Israel and Judah and coming in and bothering them. So as for the other events, verse 21 of Menahem's reign and all he did, do I have to keep reading? Are they not written in the book of the annals of the kings of Israel? Menahem rested with his ancestors, and Pekahiah his son succeeded him as king. In the 50th year of Azariah, king of Judah, Pekahiah, son of Menahem, became king of Israel in Samaria, and he reigned 2 years. Pekahiah did evil in the eyes of the Lord. He did not turn away from the sins of Jeroboam, blah, blah, blah. One of his chief officers conspired against him, taking 50 men of Gilead with him. He assassinated Pekahiah. Good, I didn't really like that name. Along with Argob and Ariah in the citadel, the royal palace at Samaria. So Pekah killed Pekahiah. So Pekah killed Pekahiah and succeeded him as king. And the other events of Pekahiah's reign and all he did are written, blah, blah, blah. 27, 52nd year of Azariah, King Pekah, now the one that got rid of Pekahiah, son of, now look at this next one, Remaliah, became king of Israel in Samaria, and he reigned 20 years. He did evil in the eyes, etc. Verse 29, in the time of Pekah, king of Israel, Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, came and took these towns. They're naming all these towns and these people. He took Gilead and Galilee, including all the land of Naphtali. He deported all the people to Assyria, verse 29. And verse 30, then Hoshea, son of Elah, conspired against Pekah, son of Remaliah, and he attacked and assassinated him, succeeded him as king. Verse 31, the other Pekah's reign, you can read about that. Verse 32, in the 2nd year of Pekah, son of, okay, I want to be really clear. I'm in no way mocking this or making fun of it or making light of it. It's just a history of a lot of names and the same pattern. Are we catching the pattern? If we're catching the pattern, we're kind of skim reading here a little. So we can move on, because basically what's the deal? They come in, they don't wholeheartedly serve God, they end up getting killed or suffer or having enemy attacks against them because they can't get their act together and serve God wholeheartedly like they should. Is that not the kind of that? Can we summarize all of these? 2nd year, verse 32, same thing happens. 25-year-old becomes king. He reigns 16 years. His mother's name goes on and all this. But verse 34, it says, he did what was right in the eyes of the Lord. Wow, just as his father Uzziah had done. The high places, however, were not removed, and the people continued to offer sacrifices. 2 Chronicles 27 is where you would jump to that book, read on that, and it would give you kind of more extensive history of the whole building up in Jerusalem and Judah. As for the other events of Jotham's reign and what he did, are not written in the annals of the king of Judah. And then verse 37 is, in those days, the Lord began to send Rezin, king of Aram, and Pekah, son of Remaliah, against Judah. Jotham rested with his ancestors, was buried with him in the city of David and the city of his father, and Ahaz his son succeeded him as king. And so we made it to chapter 16. Maybe I can see ways we can kind of skim ourselves, and next Wednesday try to wrap up. I don't want to make promises, but we came quite a ways. Yeah, maybe I can highlight, and we can kind of hit some highlights and move through, and try to wrap up 2 Kings this next week. But Father, we know that as we read this, for us the names sound strange. The constant battles seem far away and kind of unimportant to us. the constant things, but what's critical you want us to catch over and over and over again is people trying to lead others into a partial obedience to God. This nation, the United States, was founded on God, and yet it's trying to live a partial life with God as being part of it, but blended to so many other things, and most of all to evil. So somehow, Father, these lessons are still happening in 2023, where we have countries like ours who think they can blend other things along with obeying God, and it just doesn't work. Because evil wins out every time on this earth. Until you come, as we studied in Revelation, and end that pattern. But Father, you're asking us to make sure that we can't change our whole country, but we can change our households. We can change our extended families. We can change where we work. We can change the places where we have influence into people who wholeheartedly serve God, not half-heartedly or partially, but wholeheartedly serving God. And that's your desire for each of us. So help us capture that thought today and walk away evaluating our own lives about, are we wholeheartedly serving you? We ask that in Jesus' name. Amen. Flyers in the back. We'll be here next Wednesday. Don't miss it. We'll try to see what we can come to in a way of conclusion before we take a break. Thanks for being with us today. Hope you enjoyed all those crazy names.